Welcome to Across Africa. Now, as this summer, Paris revels in the excitement of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, we take a look at how sport can help drive Africa's development. Now, as well as celebrating Africa's sporting elite, the tournament has also been a great way of showing how sport is more than just performance. It can have a huge social impact if the right game plan is put together. It can help kick Africa's transformation up a notch. And just ahead of the Games, at a huge meeting here in Paris on sporting initiatives, $100 billion was pledged to improving sports infrastructure in communities around the world. But what does that mean for Africa? And who better to ask than Remy Rioux, the head of France's development agency, the AFD, Agence France de Développement. Remy, thanks so much for making time to come see us.
Thank you.
First of all, what do you think that I'm overstating the case? I mean, sport is nice. Is it important?
True that for a very long time, sport has not been considered seriously, especially by development economists. So somehow sport was what you can do after everything is accomplished. And what we try to change, taking advantage of hosting the Olympics and now the Paralympics, is just to change that perception and have leaders, have financiers, have the sports organization themselves explain, work on what they can contribute concretely if we would integrate sport in all development activities. Because sport is evocation, sport is a huge business, sport is a public policy, so we can do way more. And we thought by 2017, when we had the chance to be responsible of the Olympics, that there was something to do this summer about it.
But what specifically does that mean within the African context? We saw $100 billion being pledged to developing community sports around the world. How much of that is going to Africa, and what does that do in Africa?
So the summit we organized July 25th. So we had 66 heads of state and government. It was a global summit. We had 15 African leaders. So President Diomaye of Senegal concluded. You know, he will host the next big Olympic event, which is the Youth Olympic Games in 2026. President Kagame, so active in developing a public policy for sport in Rwanda, was there. Prime Minister Ahanush of Morocco was there. He will host, the World Cup in 2030 in Morocco. But it was more global. And the idea was to demonstrate, and now we are lacking data, but we have now clear evidence that sport is good for health. So we know that obesity and depression can be reduced by 30%. This is UNESCO figures, if you have a regular physical activity. Sport is good for education. We know it's good for brain functioning, so we know that the test scores are improved by 40% when you have regular activity. Sport is good for, of course, for inclusion. Maybe we will talk about it. When you ask women, so it's more in Europe, but I'm sure the answer will be the same in Africa. They are developing confidence, they are reducing anxiety when they have regular sporting activities. And to sum it up, we know that investing €1 or $1 in sports saves $3 of public expenditures for health. I mean, so it's better to take that upstream rather than to deal with the consequences, problems later. So that's global figures. And of course, we have a specific attention to Africa, but this is also the region where we lack data. So we have to collect and build a system to collect data about it, to demonstrate leaders, to demonstrate the private sector, that it's worth investing in sports. But what are you
collecting data on? Like, what concretely already has been done? Because I think that, we understand the concept of how important sport can be in terms of pulling together various other kind of programs or efforts to drive development, but on the ground, grassroots, in communities, what is happening?
So the data are more coming from specific projects for now. So that's why they are a bit here and there, and it's difficult to aggregate and make the case in totality. Because when we are financing sports, we are financing first athletes and specific activities. So, of course, I can give you hundreds of examples. AFD has financed about 200 projects since we got the games in 2017. So, in the project in Africa, of course, for 200 million euro and in 50 countries now. We accompanied about 100 athletes willing to give back their community what they got from the chance of being professional athletes, for instance. So, and within the projects, there's always a research component. So there we collect data, which can give us a first idea of what I'm telling you. But again, it's more advanced, a bit like the sports economy, because it's 3% of GDP, sport. It's more advanced in North America. Yes, and we estimate it's only 0.5% in Africa for now. So there's a huge upside, maybe bigger than what we expect from other economic sectors. So it's time to invest, and also it's time to invest because you know very well that one youngster out of 3 in the world will be African by 2050. Meaning one artist, meaning one medalist of the games. So
but I think
this is happening.
Well, one of the things that was really interesting speaking to some of your team earlier is how this potential growing market of young people on the continent is actually attracting attention from some of the really big sporting organizations like the NBA. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that came out of that pre-Olympic meeting was a pledge to build 1,000 basketball courts in Africa. Now, why did it focus its attention on the continent?
When we started this journey, the first one I bumped into with this intuition is my dear friend Amadou Gallo-Fall. So he was at that time the head of NBA Africa, based in Johannesburg, and now he's the chair, the president of the Basketball Africa League, which is a Pan-African initiative with FIBA and the NBA associated. And he's also the head of a very, very interesting NGO called SEEDS in Senegal, in TS, which is developing precisely education impact through basketball. So I would a bit differ with you because basketball is really a global game. It's the second immediately after football.
Oh, wow.
And so that's the way we started. We started through basketball. And you know, basketball in history is very special, especially in France, because it was more open to women. And it was also, and it's closer sometimes to the families and the communities when compared to football, when you have to go because the pitch is way bigger, then you have to go farther, and so it's easier to deal with gender equality, gender violence, sometimes in the basketball setting context than for football. But we're also working with football. So yes, you said it. The NBA with FIBA wants to do more in Africa, and they're really focused on Africa because there's a lot of talent and they know it, and France knows it as well. But FIFA also committed in July to finance 1,000 football mini pitches, and the idea of President Infantino is to do it in schools. So the development agencies, banks, the idea is would provide schools, because we are financing new schools. And there's a global partnership for education, which is doing that, gathering 19 of our institutions. And FIFA and maybe the NBA will come and finance and complement the infrastructure with football or basketball courts.
How do you ever encounter any difficulty in navigating encouraging women to do certain sports in certain cultural contexts, but also making sure that they don't put themselves in a position where they might be in conflict with certain kind of traditional conservative expectations of their behavior?
We're not naive. I mean, and sport does not unlock development impact by essence. So there's a way of investing in sports so that it creates impacts. And this is something, as I said it, development experts, institutions are beginning to consider. The power of sport for development. And this is something the world of sport is also beginning to factor in. because they know that, and sometimes there are criticism for these big events. They know that they have to improve their carbon footprint for climate. They know that they have to improve the way they take context into account and how to give back to the communities something. And so this is why we are pushing to connect, again, the world of sport and the world of development, which is somehow a first. And it's not about PR. I mean, it's really about impact. And this is exactly what we can provide as development experts, this attention to context and the way to invest so that, well, these consequences, attacks, gender inequality does not happen. This is our work. I mean, we are professional of that.
Remy Rioux, thank you so much for giving us a bit of a talk through about some of the hopes of further ramping up investment in sport for African development. Thanks for taking the time for joining us here at Across Africa. That's it, though, all the time we have for it now. Join us again if you can. Till then, take care.